Episode 25. Do not test my patience. Serena yelped and stepped back. The soup was still poured on her. The steaming soup wetted her silk dress, leaving a large wet mark. It hurt so much that Serena puffed in and out, holding the tray further from her body. Jake did not expect her to be holding something. He was first dazed and quickly reacted to take over the tray. Jake looked at her wet dress. It was summertime, so Serena was wearing a silk slip dress. The wet mark was near her lower stomach, clearly showing the color of her panties. They were baby blue. Jake glanced at it, suddenly felt a bit disturbed, and asked in a hoarse voice, "Are you okay?" Serena's eyes were red. She stared at him and said, "Try getting burned by a bowl of noodle soup yourself." Looking at the bowl of noodle soup, with half of the soup gone, Jake slightly relaxed his expression and asked, "You cooked for me?" "Nanny Harper asked me to." Serena lifted the slip dress, felt the burn on her skin and said, "She specifically called to ask me to make sure you do not starve." Jake heard her and smiled slightly. His voice was steady and low. "You sure that's what she meant?" Serena was dazed and then blushed. "You..." For some reason, Jake was pleased by her look. Holding the tray with one hand, he grabbed her arm with the other and said, "Let's go dress your wound." Dress her wound? Serena glanced at where it burned. It still felt terrible, but she was wearing a dress. Not to mention a super thin silk slip dress. If he were to treat her wound, doesn't it mean that the dress had to be lifted? Thinking that, Serena was suddenly reminded of the bulge she had seen the other morning and blushed even more. Serena took back her arm and said, "No thanks. Just eat the noodles. Only some soup's missing. I will just go wash up." "No," Jake said resolutely. "It was my fault, so I will get it right." He sounded serious. For some reason, Serena did not speak again and let him take her to the sofa in the living room. Jake placed the noodles on the table and brought a first aid kit. Serena suddenly blushed and stood up, trying to take the kit in her hand. She said, "It is okay. I can do it myself. Go eat. Do not starve." "Sit down." His voice was authoritative, not taking any objection from her. Serena wanted to say something, but Jake suddenly caught her hand. His hand was rough and hot. Jake's other hand was placed on her shoulder, pushing her back on the sofa and covering her body with his. Seeing the handsome face approaching her, Serena held her breath. Seeing that his wife had become obedient, Jake had a subtle smile on his face. He looked down and saw Serena's lips slightly parted, as if she was frightened by him. Enticing. Jake held down the desire that was initiated by Serena and whispered satisfactorily, "That's right. Be a good girl." His voice sounded mesmerizing. Serena felt a feather was tickling her ears, giving her goosebumps. This man was such a tease. Jake stood up, gazing at the woman forced into the corner of the sofa by him. He looked down and slowly took out the ointment for burns. "Lift it." Serena suddenly felt dizzy, blushed, and then quickly got up. She reached for the ointment in his hand and cried, "I can do it myself!" Jake was more than 6 feet tall, while Serena was only 5'4", so there was no way she could win. Jake dodged back, and Serena failed to even touch his hand. throwing herself between his arm. So warm was the first thought that Serena had. And then she felt the pain. Rubbing her nose that had knocked on his chest, Serena was almost in tears. What she did not see was that Jake slightly curled his lips upward. The smile was so slight that it disappeared instantaneously. He looked down with his dark eyes. "Offering yourself? Huh?" Serena suddenly backed off. For God's sake, she did not mean to do that. Looking at her stomach again, Jake repeated, "Lift it." "No!" "I will put the ointment on you." Serena's face was burning red like the bottom of a monkey. As she was thinking about what she should say to refuse him, his hand was in front of her eyes. Lifting her slip dress, Jake would take no argument. Serena cried and held her dress down, but her hands were removed by him forcefully. "Let go. Let me put the ointment on you." "I can do it myself." "You cooked for me, and I will do this for you. I am fair." "There is no need. Just go and eat." "Let go." Jake sounded a bit displeased. "Do not test my patience." Serena paused and eventually let go. All right, it was just the ointment. He had seen whatever there was, so it was probably fine. This man was so stubborn, and it was just impossible to change his mind. Serena knew his character well, pursed her lips, and slightly lifted her dress up. Wetting a Q-tip with water, Jake slowly cleaned her skin. His movements were quite gentle, so Serena did not feel any pain. However, it tickled. Serena cringed and bit her lips, afraid that she was going to laugh out loud. After cleaning her skin, Jake then started to put ointment on her. Feeling the coolness on her skin, Serena narrowed her eyes and tried not to move, but it really tickled. Also, a strange feeling started to burn from down there and slowly drowned her. Jake clearly noticed the change in her body. His eyes became darker as he recalled what she tasted like the other night, and he licked his lips unconsciously.